sorry, who
Prince,
asked the question earlier?
For this Terra class, can you resend, please?
Prince, I think you have to give him share access. Okay, there we go.
Kobe, you were saying something.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, never mind. I just wanted
the
to give him
blog
a share,
for the
share access.
for this class, I didn't get it. Is it possible for you to resend it to me?
Okay. Tommy, maybe later you if you can share the links for the labs on WhatsApp.
For this session, right?
Yesterday and today.
Yesterday I did share yesterday, but I can share it again.
Yeah, please. If you can share it yesterday and today, you share it on WhatsApp. Okay.
Okay. Give me a second here.
I didn't know what was going on, so I just stopped sharing.
Oh, give me a second. I just wanted to share this. Thanks. Okay, so I just shared the link for yesterday's session, and I'm going to share the link for today's session as well. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You can share.
Yeah, so I was here. I didn't know how to do the path on my local, so I was here with it. That's where I'm at.
So you're using a Mac. Do you have Brew installed in Mac?
Brew?
Yeah.
I think I should have it on my master, correct?
Try Brew install Terraform from the terminal.
Is it for everybody using Mac? We can. Do we have to download or?
So there are different ways of installing on Terraform on Mac. You can use there's this one service, perhaps, I think that's what it's called, that they have on Mac that is called Brew. So Brew just basically installs Terraform for you and also sets the path.
Wow.
Now, if you do Terraform.
Yeah, they all have Brew because they installed Maven using Brew. So you guys use Brew.
So do we click Brew?
Yeah, all the Mac users. It's
wow.
There we go.
So okay, please say it again. Brew install Terraform. Just what's it?
Brew install Terraform.
Yeah, Brew install Terraform. That was pretty simple.
Now the Windows guys are envious.
I know, right?
Yeah, Mac is quite
What a Mac can do, a Windows can do better. I beg you.
All right, so I'm gonna
okay.
continue. I'm gonna continue with the lab today, and I'm gonna just do this do this later on because it's pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Perfect. Anyone else has any questions before we get started? Okay, let me share my screen.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna do a quick recap. We have a lot to do today. So I also added some bonuses here. So I'm just gonna go over this after I do the recap. So yesterday we went over Terraform. Once again, I'm gonna go over this very fast. If I'm going too fast, you can feel free to cut me off. But Terraform is basically like an open source used for provisioning or managing your infrastructure. As we said yesterday, it supports third-party services. You can keep your life cycles efficient and consistent. So this means dev, QA, prod, UAT. You can keep it efficient.
Yeah, by life cycles, sorry, Tommy, to cut you short. By life cycles, you mean your environments?
Yeah, life cycles are also the same thing as environments.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, you can keep that efficient because Terraform allows you to keep your code basically the same across different environments. You can also utilize things like variables, which I'm going to touch base on, and also it's declarative. So it's declarative because it utilizes the resources and defines the end results. Infrastructure as code. It requires you to run a set of resources. So a set of resources are basically like components of AWS. Anything that needs to be provisioned with Terraform would be considered an infrastructure setup, right? So that's why Terraform is an infrastructure as code tool. Phases of Terraform, you have the code, which is the configuration file. You have the init, which downloads the necessary plugins, and then you have plan, which outputs the resources that are about to be created, and also it compares the desired to what actually exists. So if you already created an infrastructure, for instance, I need to provision a new one. Like the changes we made yesterday, it compared what existed in the state file and outputted new changes, right? So that's what it does. And then you have apply, where it executes your configuration and provisions whatever infrastructure you declare. And then you have the architecture. You have two main components, which are the Terraform core. Then you have the provider and provisioners as well. We went through the Terraform configuration file. We went through the provisioning and connection settings, which can be used for copying files from your local machine to the remote server, or you can also use the remote exec to bootstrap whatever script you have from your local machine. Well, not from your local machine, but you can bootstrap and invoke scripts utilizing Linux commands within a Terraform
Sorry.
file. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Damilola. So I just want to chip in something. Can you please go back to the architecture of the Terraform? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just want to add this as a bonus point for the other people in the class. So something happened yesterday, and what Prince usually say, like we should pay attention. Like attention to detail is very, very important. So one recruiter called me yesterday, and it was like, I want to talk to you for like 5-10 minutes. Or we ended up spending like 25 minutes. One of the questions she asked me was, mention two main components of Terraform. Thank God I was paying attention in the morning, like when Tommy was explaining this. Trust me, I would have flopped. I just said Terraform core, and I was about saying our providers and provisioners. And the next thing she said, like, you know what, it just passed. We are moving into the next phase and scheduled me for Monday. So what I'm trying to say is like all these little things matters. And for some that'll be like, okay, after the class, no worry, I'll do it Wednesday, Thursdays, like 3-4 days after. Like try as much as possible. If there's something you can just write down, because watching videos is good, but a lot of times you just feel like, okay, don't worry, I'll come back to it. And within those periods, you lose a lot of information because your brain is doing something else. That's what I want to say. You can write down, Tommy.
But I won't feel
Thank
it
you for
like
that,
I
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. Are you saying the two main components of Terraforms are Terraform code and providers?
Yeah, that is correct. You can either use Terraform core or provisioners, or Terraform core and providers. Either one works, but they're
Okay.
components of Terraform.
And what is Bootstrap?
Bootstrap is basically how you can invoke a script into like a server. So for instance, the remote exec, right, which we went over. Right, so this is bootstrapping, right? Because you're passing like different commands to run on a server. So that's a bootstrapping because you're invoking the script within AWS configuration block. That's what bootstrap basically means.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for that, Demi. Yeah, I totally co-sign that. It's definitely important to little details. They can ask you as simple as what is a state file, and that's where they catch a lot of people. I remember when my first interview was starting after getting out the class. You know, we didn't know much about Terraform. We didn't learn much about automation. Honestly, we just really learned the fundamentals, and a lot of this information I had to learn on my own. So definitely be paying attention to those keywords. Definitely terminologies are definitely important. Knowing how to explain them and describe them in your own way, to be honest. Not everything you have to explain verbatim, but the main important thing is the understanding of how to, you know, define it your own way. So moving along. Yeah, so yeah, you have the provisioners, the provisioner file that copies files from your local machine to the server. And then you have the remote exec, which bootstraps.
I added some additional information on the chats on meaning of bootstrapping. It's just some additional. It's when you bootstrap. Let me just add this, okay? Whenever this, as the server is coming up, this is the first commands that will be executed as the server is coming up. Okay, so it's more like as you're booting, it's booting. These are the scripts, okay, that will come up, or the first things that it will do before to get the server ready. I said a screenshot I got from the internet that will help you guys too. Okay, carry on, Tommy.
Thank you. And here we also added the provisioning local. This basically invokes like whatever commands you want to run locally, either locally or wherever you're running Terraform. So today we're going to be installing Terraform on our Jenkins server, right? So in that specific scenario, that is not going to be locally, although it says local exec, but that is going to be remote on a remote server that Terraform is running on. But I mean, it's still locally because you just install Terraform on that remote server, right? So whatever command you pass in here, it's gonna run on wherever you install Terraform, essentially. Then we have imperative versus declarative. Imperative is where you basically list the steps of what you want a tool to do, or whatever you want your code to do, which is an example would be Ansible. So Ansible has playbooks that has a list of tasks, right? And Terraform is quite different because Terraform utilizes the resources to make API calls through the credentials, right? So that's why it defines what exactly you want it to do, because everything has been defined within a resource block. Okay, so the comparison, we already
Tommy,
went over the comparison.
Tommy,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
this is Serge. What do you call again API call? What is that?
API call is like, so think of API call as whenever you're talking to something, you need to supply some kind of credential, right? So for instance, let's say like the user we created yesterday, we created the IAM user for Terraform to talk to AWS provider, right? That is an API call because a credential, I'm trying to see here. So essentially, anytime you get like a defined information for you.
I think I have something on. I'm sharing something on the WhatsApp chat.
But to my understanding, basically, what an API call is like anytime you have to talk to anything and supply some kind of credential.
Oh, okay.
So here they say here an API call is the process that takes place from the API set up and ready to go. So yeah, any setup that you have, right? An AWS is a API setup. If you want to talk to AWS, obviously you have to supply some credential before you can connect to it. So
Okay.
that is an API call.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. So let me go back here. Okay, so yeah, we went over the comparisons. So I'm not gonna go over that. So what I added was data source. So what a data source is in Terraform is it uses information defined outside of Terraform or defined in another separate Terraform configuration, or just to modify any functions that have been modified, right? Maybe through Ansible or through Puppet. You can call whatever resource. And I'll give you an example of that. So here, you have, obviously you have AMI that already exists within AWS, right? You have public AMIs that you can utilize. So I can use a data source to call the most recent Ubuntu server that is in AWS on this account, this public account. So I'm referencing the public account. I'm filtering the search by virtualization type, which is HVM. And I'm also filtering the search by the name. So the name here, you just have to give the name, the value, which is the value here, and then you give it asterisk. The asterisk at the end searches for everything that has this name. And then I also declare within that block, make sure you select the most recent, which is why I declared it as true. Okay, so now to declare this, to define this data source within your EC2 instance, this is what you do. It's already been defined in the data block, but you have to define it in the EC2 instance. So let's say I don't want to use this right here, which I already defined, right? And I want to use this block. All I have to do is delete this, and I'm gonna type in data.aws_ami.ubuntu, and that's it. right? So now the AMI, whenever this configuration file is being executed, it's gonna look for the most recent Ubuntu image and gonna attach that image to this instance. So that's another way of like using data source if you don't want to always like declare or define like an AMI, or let's say you have like an existing user, for instance. Let's say yesterday I have a different team that manages the IAM roles or IAM users, right? And I already requested, I logged in a ticket. Let's say I'm in an enterprise and I logged in a ticket. I was like, okay, I need a user for this specific use case, right? And they gave me, they already like used Terraform. They also use Terraform in their environment. They use Terraform to provision the user for me, and they supplied me the credential. Now, to use that user within my workspace and use it for whatever use case I want to use it for, I can easily do this here. So for that, I can easily do a data AWS underscore IAM underscore user. So don't forget, the data source is always also identical to whatever the name of the resource block is. So this is something that already exists as a resource. So I'm just utilizing that as a data source. Okay. So that is the given resource name, but in this case, we're using this as a data source. And now we just have to give it a local name, which I'll just give it example. And then I'll specify here what I'm looking for, which is the username. The username can be, the username I created yesterday, I believe was called Terraform admin user. And you have to close. So you have to open this and close this. So yeah, so that's basically how you do the user. So whenever you declare this, let's say you want to use this wherever you declare this, you just have to do data AWS underscore IAM user dot example. So it's pretty easy to use the data source.
Sorry, Tony, it's done. So yesterday when you were working on the remote exec, and Prince chipping something about the user data, and you were saying like it's almost the same thing, just like the remote exec will show you the process running, like the output once you run it, but the user data you have to go to the console or something. So is this the user data you're talking about?
No, so this one is different. This is just for whenever you need to, let's say you have like a folder, you're working on a specific space or workspace, and you need to call some information from a different space, or you need to call some information from AWS, maybe a generic information like an AWS AMI, right? And you don't want to specify your AMI within your EC2 instance, because all the time, if you have to specify your AMI, it's not best practice, right? Because this here, if you specify your AMI like this in a professional settings, every time that AMI, let's say there's an update or there's patches within that AMI, and you keep deploying that same AMI every time you have releases or whatever, if that AMI has bugs within it, that's gonna be a problem, right? Then you have to go back, you have to revert back, you have to start again, all that kind of stuff. But if you're using data source, to leverage the most recent Ubuntu that is in AWS that has been updated with all the patches, everything. You wouldn't run into that issues. Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So the user data that you're talking about, I'm actually going to go into that. So the user data is also the same thing as remote exec. It also bootstraps a script or invokes a script is the same thing, and only runs at lunchtime. This is also the same thing as the remote exec. It only runs at lunchtime. Now, the difference between user data and the remote exec is the remote exec, as Dami mentioned, it only outputs the process as is being executed, while the user data, you have to log into the box to see where, like, what is, and basically follow the execution, right? So that's the only difference. And also the remote exec, you have to supply the connection settings for the server that is being created to connect, right, remotely. But the user data, you don't have to supply your private key, right? So in a professional setting, if you use like your remote exec, one issue I've run into with remote exec is with Jenkins, it's very hard to kind of like pass your private key as a variable. That is something that I'm still struggling with. Other tools like Gitlab. Gitlab is now one of the, I know I'm going off topic here, but this is good information. Gitlab is one of the competitive tools that is competing with Jenkins right now because it's easier, right? Jenkins uses slaves, Jenkins slaves. However, Gitlab, you can configure Gitlab runners locally, or you can have a shared runner, right? So wherever your GitLab is installed, you can also have a shared runner, which would be deploying your CI/CD pipeline. Or you can also configure your GitLab runner on an EC2 instance and talk to whatever GitLab server that you have up and running. So that's the advantages of GitLab, and that's why it takes an edge over Jenkins at the moment.
I'm sorry, Tommy. Oh, you said Jenkins use Jenkins Flakes. I didn't hear that part clearly, please.
So Jenkins uses slaves, right? So if you want to
Slaves.
do
He's talking
like
about slaves. Slave Jenkins.
Okay.
Slave.
Okay.
yeah, so if you want to like set up like a CI/CD pipeline, right? And you want whatever pipeline or whatever job you've created to run on a specific slave. Obviously, you have to point into whatever slave you have configured, right? However, in GitLab is a little bit different. Instead of configuring slaves, you configure a GitLab runner. A GitLab runner can run locally. So now, let's say I'm just gonna go to the public GitLab, right? Because sometimes they do ask you these questions in interviews. So it's just good to know the difference, even though you haven't utilized the tool. Let me go to GitLab. Right, so this is a generic GitLab, right? Oh, okay. Okay, so this is GitLab, right? I don't think it's gonna let me have access to where they have. Yeah, it's not gonna let me access it, but just want to show you an example here. Okay, so this is like a GitLab. So you know how you have like Jenkins files within Jenkins? It's the same thing here within GitLab. So GitLab, you can specify within a YAML file, you can specify, let's say you have like a prepare stage, you have a build stage, you have a deploy stage, or whatever stage you have, right? Within each stage, you can specify what runner you wanted to pick up. So let's say you install your runner locally on your Mac or your Windows, whatever, right? You can basically connect that runner you installed on your Mac or your Windows and make it talk to whatever GitLab that you have up and running instead of running it on the same server that GitLab is running on, right? So it controls you. It basically gives you like control over your pipeline rather than having to depend on Jenkins admin. So that is the big difference, right? And that's why user data is a better approach for a professional setting because you don't have to always supply that private key. Okay, an example of a user data, there are two ways you can write a user data. The first way is where you pass all the command lines within your resource block, which this would be a very hectic way if you have a long script, right? If you have a long script, then this is gonna be very, very long and it's just gonna be all over the place. However, you have a different way of doing it. Sorry, okay, yeah. You have a different way of doing it as well, which is passing your file within your directory to your user data, right? And encoding that whatever script you have. So this base 64 encode, it basically encodes your install scripts so that way it's not visible within your metadata, right? So it installs this and then whenever it's provisioned in AWS instance, it captures that file and runs the installation. Okay, so this way, I would recommend this way because it's easier and it keeps you your code organized. This way is a more, if you have something simple and you have like a couple of lines of code, then this way, this approach is fine. Okay.
So can you pass?
And,
can you pass any scripts apart from shell? Any other kind of scripts?
So you can pass different kind of scripts. It just really depends. So if you have any other kind of scripts, let's say if you have like a PowerShell, obviously you have to run on Windows.
Okay. I understand. Because since it's your user data, you're dealing with a Linux box. Those are Linux commands. Then it just makes sense. You can just pass the bash. Yeah. If you're doing PowerShell, then you're dealing with a PowerShell Windows box. You're doing PowerShell and just pass PowerShell script. That okay, that's fine.
Before you move forward, so under the batch, is that 7 a.m.? What does that batch mean? Like the batch, yeah.
Oh, this is just tagging. So the batch, which is the current batch we have, 7 a.m., is just a tag, nothing. So the way I tag Terraform as name, this will tag the resource, the EC2 instance Terraform. And then whenever this is created, this would also tag the instance with batch equals 7 a.m.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So
Tommy,
it's just a tag name.
yeah, Tommy, good morning. Yeah, before you move on the user data, how do you encode a file? Like, do you do that from a Notepad plus plus or what? I don't know, man.
So whenever you like list the Linux commands within the install.sh, you don't need to do anything. All you have to do is just pass this argument here, which is base64 encode, and that automatically encodes your script for you.
So you just type it out.
Yeah, you just type it out basically.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
And you
Okay,
said,
and
you said it's
lastly-
sorry, you said it's passing the files within the directory?
Yeah, within the same directory, you have your main.tf.
Okay.
And lastly, we have the input variables. This is, I believe, someone asked me about variables yesterday. So variables serves as parameters, right, for within a Terraform configuration file. So it allows you the capacity to share that variable between different resources blocks, right? So, for example, let's say you want to pass a variable. You wanna pass the instance type as a variable, right? This is how it will look like. So you have to declare the variable, which is you give it a name. In this case, I gave it EC2 underscore type. Make sure that is in quotes, double quotes. Open the string, the block with the parentheses, and the type is string. The default is going to be the name of the value of whatever instance type you like to choose. And then description would be whatever description you want to give it. This description is not required. I just like doing it because I like to describe everything whatever variables I'm passing, right? So this is a string type of variable. You also have like a list string type of variable. A list string would look something like, let me see if I have an example. So a list string would look something like this, right? So if you want, let's say you have like multiple availability zones, and you like to list different availability zones, you can put it into a list string. So in this case, I only supplied one, but let's say I had multiple. I can do this, US. So that's a list string, right? And then you can utilize it, basically specifying that variable, right? So it's pretty much easy to pass variables. There's a lot of things you can do with variables, and honestly, variables also can be confusing because they just pushed out some new releases on the 14 version of Terraform that allows you to do more stuff. So let's say you pass a variable, you can also like run commands within that variable, but I don't want to confuse anyone, so I'm not going to go into that. I have to look into it myself. The 14 version was just released, I believe, last week. So I'm not going to go into that. This is more than helpful for what you need to make you successful within like the professional settings. As long as you just know how to pass variables and explain it as well, you're good to go. So that basically completes the lesson for today. Before I go into the hands-on exercise, does anyone have any questions?
What language is this being coded in? Is because it looks a lot like Python. I don't know.
Good question. So Terraform is coded in HCL. And what that stands for is HashiCorp language. Terraform can also be coded as JSON as well. This is not a JSON format though. This is a HCL format, which is a HashiCorp language. So HashiCorp has its own language, which is why exactly it's really, really simple to read. The JSON is, however, really, it confuses me personally. I mean, you might have a different intake on that, but for me, the JSON confuses me, so I just prefer the HCL format.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I was looking at it because I was confusing myself. I didn't. Oh, yeah.
Cool. So any other questions? Like I said, we have a lot to do today. So if there are no questions, we can definitely go into the exercise for today. Going once, twice. Okay. It's like we're all good. Okay, so guys, I want to make sure that everything I'm doing from now to the end of the session, everyone pays close attention. This is gonna be a lot of information. I just want to set the expectation before I start. There's gonna be a lot of information that I'm gonna be going over. However, there's gonna be a recording afterwards that you guys will have access to. So you can always go back and scan through. Whatever you guys don't understand, also feel free to reach out. So yeah, let's get started.
Let me add something. Let me add to that, okay? He's going to show you guys a professional way, okay, to provision your resources using what you have available. And what we have available is your repository, which is Bitbucket. You have Jenkins, and you also have Terraform. Okay, we'll show you a very professional way. Okay, so this part that he's trying to display is the section that you are going to implement your project. Okay, so if you don't get it now or during the labs, okay, all these things that you're doing, this is the part you are going to actually implement your project, because all the use cases is going to cover everything. All right, carry on, Tony.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing on the list is we're going to go over installing Terraform on our Jenkins server. I believe everyone should still have their Jenkins server up and running. And if you don't, that is fine. You can always provision a new one. After that, we're going to also install Terraform plugin on Jenkins. Once we have that installed, we're going to configure Terraform. After that has been configured, then I'm going to show you the best practice for storing and encrypting credentials in Jenkins for security purposes. After that, we're also going to set up a CD pipeline. This CD pipeline can be used for operations. So let's say you're within a cloud environment, like you're a DevOps engineer, they just hired you as a DevOps engineer or cloud engineer. This is what most likely you're going to be working with. You're not going to work on the CI pipeline. I promise you that. You're going to be working majority on the CD pipeline because you're not a developer. So you're not required to write code. You're just required to automate the processes of an application and releases, right? So this is definitely going to be helpful because it's going to be like a generic template that you can use for any application you like to spin up. Also, we're going to learn on executing that pipeline job with a plugin that I'm going to install on my Jenkins server, which is called Blue Ocean plugin, right? And we're also going to rerun the same pipeline job we executed to destroy the infrastructure we've built. Okay, So let me go ahead and get started here. Go to the lesson, expand this. Close out of this. Cool. Okay, so let me make sure my Jenkins server is running. Okay, so while that is running, we're just going to read over this. So an overview of what we're doing. The goal is to implement DevOps best practices to run Terraform in Jenkins pipeline. We will go over the main concepts that need to be considered and a Jenkins file that runs Terraform. The Jenkins file will consist of parameters that allows us to pass data as variables in our pipeline job. Okay. Okay, so this is up and running. Let me log into, let me go to it. And also I'm gonna SSH into the server because I'm gonna need to do that. Okay, so the first step, we're gonna install Terraform on Jenkins server. So we just have to, it's also simple, the same thing as running Terraform on a local machine. It's really simple to install it on your server too as well. So all you have to do is, so if you get this link, so I already have this installed, but I'm gonna do it again. So as you can see, this is the file I just downloaded here. So if I do unzip, so once you unzip it, it's gonna unzip that file, and then you basically move whatever you just created into your user bin directory, and that's it, right? For installing Jenkins, for installing Terraform on the Jenkins server. So it's just 3 steps. It's pretty easy. Now the next step is you go to your Jenkins server that is up and running. Once again, you guys should have this up and running. And if you don't, I can always provide you guys a Terraform script that can deploy a Jenkins server. Okay.
Can I ask you a question real quick? It's gonna be fast. So in real work scenario, are we to install Terraform on a Jenkins server?
No, so it really depends, right? It really depends on, let's say for instance, you're brought in to configure everything from scratch, then obviously, yes, you will have to do all that. But usually you're not brought in to configure everything from scratch. So Terraform and everything will be configured for you. All that environment will be set up, including the CI/CD pipelines. All you have to do majority of the time, at least with an established enterprise, would be you just have to write the code. Now you have some new companies, startup companies, that sometimes they might hire just one person, maybe a DevOps engineer, and they have like an AWS account that is available to them just for lower life cycles, which is lower environments like Dev, QA, and UAT. Now, your manager can tell you, okay, you know what, we don't have anything set up. I want you to go set up like a Jenkins server and set up the CI/CD pipeline. Obviously, in that case, you will have to do it yourself, but that is very, very rare. Make sense?
Yeah, so basically our job as a DevOps engineer is just to write the Terraform code and just set up a CI/CD pipeline, isn't it?
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cool. So the next step is just installing the Terraform plugin on the Jenkins server after you've installed Terraform. Once again, this is a three-step process, so you guys shouldn't have any issues with this. So now I'm gonna go to my Jenkins, and I'm gonna try installing Terraform plugin. I already have this installed, but I'll show you the process. So you're gonna go to Manage Jenkins, Manage Plugins, and you're gonna navigate to Available. And here, this is where you're gonna search for Terraform. All right, it's not gonna show up for me because I already have it installed, but if I navigate to installed and I search for the same keyword, see here, it says installed. So on here, you're just gonna navigate to Available, install it. Also, what you're gonna need as well later on in this session is Blue Ocean. So what I recommend you to do with Blue Ocean is install everything that has to do with Blue Ocean. But anything that you see that is deprecated, that means that it no longer works. So they don't longer like push out releases for that. So no one supports it anymore. Basically, that's what that means. So you can leave this. You don't have to install the deprecated ones, but anything that corresponds to Blue Ocean, make sure you install that on your Jenkins server, as well as the Terraform. Okay, so that is it for that step. So now we're gonna go to the fun part. This is where you store and encrypt your credentials in Jenkins. So let's go back to Jenkins home. Navigate to Manage Jenkins as it says here, then Manage Credentials and click on Jenkins. Click on Jenkins. Jenkins. Click on this Jenkins, sorry. Click on Global Credentials. So as you can see, I already have both my secret key and access key, but I'm gonna add a new one. So towards your left on the panel here, you should see Add Credential. Click on that. You will have different kinds that you can select, right? So in this case, we're using go back to the select Add Credentials. I already did that. Choose secret text in the kind field. So here, secret text.
You choose the wrong thing. You choose the secret file.
Yeah.
Oh, secret. Thank you. Okay. So in the ID, you're gonna paste this in there, AWS_secret_access key for both the ID and the description. I already have this name exist, right? So I'm gonna name it something else. So I can do afterwards.
I think if you want, you can always go to your Jenkins and delete the existing credentials that you have.
So that one is a different credential, so I don't want to touch that. I'm using that for something else.
Oh, okay.
I think the reason is not accepting the characters, maybe because of the underscore, blah, blah, blah.
No, that's not it.
so that's fine. Okay, so yeah, you just name it AWS underscore secret underscore access key or whatever, and then in the secret, this is where you paste your secret key, right? So yesterday we did create our secret key and access key. I'm just gonna copy that. That's it, right? So click OK. And there you go. You have your first secret key. And now you add the same thing. It's the same exact process. Secret text. And now you add a different description, which is going to be access key. Okay. Yeah, so basically that's it. So now you have both your secret and your access key encrypted within Jenkins. So anytime you want to utilize this too, it's always going to be encrypted, and no one will be able to see that information. So this is definitely the best practice on how you can encrypt any information within Jenkins server. So now let's move to the next step here. Now we just need to configure Terraform within our Jenkins, so that way Jenkins knows the path that the Terraform exists, because you're going to need that Terraform dependency, right, to be able to run whatever Terraform configuration file. So we have to set that path. Okay, so now we're going to go to Manage Jenkins. We're going to go to Global 2 configuration, and we're going to set that path. I'm going to go back home. Jenkins, Global. And you can either do like a Control F to search for Terraform, or you can just, so here, you add the name, which is going to be Terraform in lower cases. Make sure it's in all lower cases. And then the install directory would be the /user/bin. This is where we copied, if you remember.
Sorry, tell me, does this come by default, or you have to install the Terraform plugin for you to?
You have to install the plugin.
Terraform plugin.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So for this to populate here, you do have to install the Terraform plugin first, or else you don't see this. You don't see the segment here. Okay. And once it's been installed, then you just basically add that path, and you're good to go. And you just apply and save. Okay. So now we're all good with configuring Terraform. Also, what you can also do is to verify your Terraform exists. You can just run Terraform on the Jenkins server. You can see it shows me like that is installed. All right, so we're good. So now we're into the fun part. So now we need to set up our CD pipeline for Terraform. So I'm gonna go back home, and I'm gonna create a workspace within Jenkins. I'm gonna go to New Items, and it says I should name it Terraform Pipeline. I can't name mine Terraform Pipeline because I already have one that exists on previous classes. So I'm just gonna name this Terraform Pipeline CI/CD. Okay, and then you just click Pipeline, and then click OK. It's gonna automatically take you to the configuration part. Okay. And then here, go to build triggers and enable trigger build remotely. So guys, once again, pay attention to this part. This part can get confusing. So now I'm connecting my Jenkins server to be able to trigger. I believe you guys should have already learned this too as well, but I'm gonna go over this again. This is where you trigger builds remotely from your whatever remote repo you have. So things like Bitbucket, GitLab, GitHub, whatever. So I have Bitbucket. I'm using Bitbucket in this case. I'm gonna go to build triggers, enable this. And as the instruction says, enter TF underscore token. So now, here's the Bitbucket changes. Create a new Bitbucket repo. Call it the same thing you called it, right? Let me go here. Repo. So perfect. So now it's been created. So now I set up, the instruction says I should go to the repo settings and select webhooks. Here, add webhooks. So enter the same name we provided in Jenkins. So Demi, I remember you asked me a question about API calls. This is another way of making API calls. So this is another way of supplying credentials to make API call to your Bitbucket, right? So once again, anytime credentials are provided between two different entities, that is an API call. Okay, so here, copy and paste the URL as shown below. So here it's going to consist of your Jenkins URL. So this, some of you are using your IP, and some of you are using your, I don't know if some of you are using your EC2 DNS, but for me, I'm using my EC2 DNS. So it's going to be different for everyone. Just make sure you change this as needed. Paste that in there. Also, what I would just recommend you do instead is in your configuration, whenever you're on your configuration screen, you can literally just copy from job, right, and paste it here. Now we're gonna need the build with parameters, right? This is very, very important. We're gonna need this because we're building with some parameters set, which we're gonna have set in the Jenkins file. And I'm gonna explain, I'm gonna go into that a little bit later, but we definitely need this parameters set, right? So that looks good. Status should be active. Click on skip certificate verification. Triggers, make sure this is enabled, this 3 here. So I'm gonna go back. Let me drag this away. So I have this enabled, skip certificate verification, and then I only need push. I really don't need any other permission. So I think I'm content with this.
But if we wanted to add those triggers, is it optional for us to do that?
Yeah, you can. That's totally up to you. But for this exercise, the only permission you need is a push permission. Looks like the bucket is having some issues. Oh, okay, there we go. It's been added. Okay, so we're done with the Bitbucket changes, right? So here, this is complete. So now we're gonna go back to Jenkins and we're gonna select configure. Click on the drop down to select pipeline script from SCM. So this is already good. And now it says we should go to pipeline, select pipeline script with SCM, right? This is what allows you to use Jenkins File. This is best practice, guys. Even in a professional settings, it's recommended you use a Jenkins File. However, you do have some enterprises that they define the Jenkins File within Jenkins. That is fine. I mean, but Jenkins File, the benefit of Jenkins File is it allows you to track whatever changes that anyone has made, right? So let's say you're not the only one working on a specific task, right? And you have other people in your team that are collaborating on the same code as you are. If you push a change and the other person push changes, obviously for you to track that change would be through version control. And that's where Jenkins Files comes in, right? Because you can pass that as, you can store that in a repo, right? And track it through version control. So that's the benefits of using a Jenkins file. Let's see here. Okay, so yeah, I already selected pipeline script from SCM. Now it says I should enter the credential for Bitbucket. Leave the branch master is the default, and make sure script path is the same as whatever you name it within your directory. So if this Jenkins file is in all lowercase in your directory, make sure this is all lowercase in Jenkins. If your J is capitalized, then make sure it's also capitalized in Jenkins, because this is case sensitive. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, so now I'm gonna select Git. This is where you select Git here, because we're connecting through Git to the repo. And here is where you supply, as you can see, you supply the repo, the link, the repo link to the project you just created, right? And this is the syntax of how you it will look like. So if you don't want to like type everything out, or you can just copy it as well. I think that is easier. You can just copy from here. Make sure you just copy the username and the project name. Don't copy anything else. Right, and just paste it in here and add .git.
So is that the repo where the Jenkins file is?
That's where the Jenkins file is gonna be. Yeah, once I create it.
Don't
I
worry,
haven't created the Jenkins file yet.
Yeah, sorry, let me add something to what you say. We are going to do Jenkins file pipeline as code in details next week. This is like a kind of intro, so I'll throw more light on Jenkins file next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically just reference the screenshot. It's gonna show you the exact format you need to use. So here is gonna have went to the wrong thing. Here's gonna have your username and then the repo name. But once again, you can copy it from the URL. Either way works. And then your credential would be the credential you already have. This you should have used in previous projects. So just select the credential for Bitbucket, right? And what does it say next? Okay, so the first one, set the branch to as a default. Make sure the script path is Jenkins file. Let me make sure I've done that. Okay, so my script path is already Jenkins file. The default is already a master. So it looks like I'm all good. So I'm just gonna save it.
Yes. On your projects, okay, you're not going to use master because you're going to do everything professionally. You have to create a branch that you reference for this particular operation. So maybe you just create a Terraform branch that have the Terraform scripts in it. But I'm just telling you the difference you expect to have within your project. Okay, carry on.
Okay, and also to add to that too as well. So for your project, you can still leave this as the default, which is master. Everything is going to be controlled from your Jenkins file. Trust me, you're going to have like a pretty nice way of selecting whatever you need to. So whatever environments you need to deploy into, I'm going to show you how to use your Jenkins file to do that. So you can leave this as default. And once again, the Jenkins file will control the branches you like to deploy whatever resource you want to into. Okay. So next, choose checkout from. So actually, no, I skipped a step. Right click on pipeline syntax and open it in a new tab. So this is it here. And I'm going to open that in a new tab. Okay. So now it says choose checkout from version control in the sample step field. It's the sample step field and checkout from version control. Okay. Here we don't need TVS, we need to Git. I'm gonna make sure I'm following the instructions. So in case if anything is missing here, I can always update it. Okay, so it says check out from version control and sample, did this. Enter Bitbucket URL and credential, leave the branches blank. So I'm gonna copy the same URL we used earlier. So it's gonna have your username. This is my username, and it's gonna have the name of the project, right? Then you just specify your credential, right? Leave the branches. You can leave it as master, that's fine. The default should be master. Once again, we can control this with Jenkins file, so it shouldn't matter. And then you can leave everything else the same. You're gonna generate pipeline script. This, you can leave this here. Just leave this tab open. So now we're gonna need this this script later on that we're gonna add to our Jenkins file. So we can leave that open for now. Now we're gonna create the workspace. So we're gonna go back to our local machine and gonna create the open file explorer, open a desktop and create this folder. I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna name mine something else. So Terraform. And once it's been created, and open the VS Code. Okay, so this is what I used yesterday. I don't need this anymore, so I'm just gonna go ahead and close out of it. Right, so you add the folder you just created into that workspace. And once it's been added, you can go ahead and click on Terminal at the top and open your terminal. So here it's going to open your terminal. Once again, you can select Bash here. If it opens PowerShell by default, you can always change it to Bash. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is important. So after you've opened the new terminal, then you're going to initialize your working directory. This is before we git clone that directory, right? So you initialize it first to make sure it's ready. And then you navigate to the new project you just created in your repo. And you can either clone by SSH or HTTPS. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Hi, Tony. I have a question.
Hey.
Yeah, at the first view that you did on the first tab, you didn't add git at the end of the URL, but on the second one you did. Is there like a difference of that?
The first, I both added git to the.
Oh, you did?
To both. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
For both steps.
Sorry, continue.
Okay, so I'm cloning the repo. Let me go back here. So once again, you have to initialize your directory first before you git clone anything. If you don't initialize your directory, you're gonna run into issues. So it's very important for you guys to initialize your directory first before git cloning. Initialize this. You can see it says initialize empty directory. So now we're good to go. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do HTTPS. If you have SSH configured, which you should for past projects, you can use SSH. So you can see that new the new project I created in repo exists. There you go. Cool.
I have a question for me.
Yeah.
So if you have so many projects, okay, and is it recommended for you to create a new repo for your Terraform, or you can just work on your existing repository and branch out from there?
It's recommended to create a new project. It just really depends if the project you're working on. And one thing you need to really consider too as well is the Jenkins file, right? So yesterday, I remember we did an example where we had to provision 2 instances. That is gonna it's gonna cause conflict in the Jenkins file, because now you have to pass some variables that will tag 2 instances instead of 1, right? So there will be some additional changes that will be required to be done in your file to do that. Make sense?
Okay, so in a nutshell, it's advisable just create a repo for your Terraform activities and files and everything.
Just to keep it organized, I recommend just, having a different repo for everything.
Okay.
Okay, that has been cloned. Now we're creating the files we need to deploy So in this lesson, we're going to deploy an Artifactory server with Terraform, and everything is going to be automated from A to Z. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to create the new file here, and the file is going to consist the AWS configuration. Let's get started.
Will you be using an Ubuntu server for your Artifactory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You may, I don't know if it may work, but during the class, we had some challenges with Artifactory installation with Ubuntu. The first people that it was working, then at some point, it wasn't working. I don't know if they fixed the bug, but I just give you a heads up.
Okay.
In case it doesn't turn out right, there's a bug in that. So in fact, I had to ask the students to use a CentOS instead of Ubuntu.
So I'm gonna try to see if it works, and if it doesn't, I can always change that AMI to CentOS.
If you change to CentOS, then you have to change your commands too.
Oh yeah, that's right. So let's try this first, and if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. I believe I tried this 2 days ago and it did work. So I think we should be all good. And if it doesn't, it's fine. That's the whole purpose of the class, for us to debug, right? So the second one, I need to create the security group file, which I'm going to copy here, and I'm going to go over each file in a second. I just want to copy it first, and we're going to go over it.
So this bash script will go into your, you reference it through your user data, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so let's start with the main. So here we're doing things a little bit different from how we did it in, whenever we're trying to create our EC2 instance locally, right? Because now we're passing our credentials through Jenkins. All I have to specify within my provider block is the region and the version. Now this version too as well, it's not required, but that's the version of AWS I want to be installed. So you remember whenever we do Terraform init, it installs the necessary plugins. I'm referencing the version I want, which is 2.0. Okay, so that's the version of AWS is going to install, and you don't need to supply your access key or your secret key in here because it's already encrypted in Jenkins, right? So that's why this block is like this. Then you have the resource block for AWS instance. The only thing I've added here is the volume, and I've also added the user data. So now user data, as I mentioned before, you have to basically pass the script that is in your working directory. As you can see, I'm using a deploy.sh. This is in my current working directory. So I'm passing that as an argument, and I'm basically encoding that, right? So that way it's not visible within my state file. Here, specifying the AMI, that we already went over, and then this is the root block volume. So for this case, for this instance, I'm telling it that I want a volume that is 200 gigs, right? This is going to be a root volume. You can also do like an additional volume on an EC2 instance, but you will have to leverage the volume resource, which is available to you once again on the web. So all those resources is not something you have to write. They're all available to you. So you just have to just do a little bit of reading and copy and pasting, to be honest. So here, for this at a factory server, once again, I'm specifying 200 gigs for my at a factory server, and I'm tagging it. So in this case, I'm giving it, this is just a standard that I came up with. So this is my own naming convention within my AWS environment. So this U2 represents the region. So this is US East 2. And then the environment would be dev, QA, UAT, prod, whatever. I'm passing this as a variable. And I'm also passing the application as a variable as well, which is right here. So the way to pass.
Tommy, so real quick, this is Serge. What is volume?
Volume is a storage, right? That's where you store, think of whenever you provision a EC2 instance, right? And then you want to install whatever on that server. Obviously, if you don't have storage attached to that server, you're gonna run out of space, right?
Okay.
So you need to install. It's just like where you install data, basically, that is required for the application.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
I have one question on
Okay,
this.
so
Okay? Sorry, I have one question on
yeah.
this setup. Okay, where are we gonna store the state file?
This setup, good question. That is a very good question. I actually didn't add the I didn't add the backend to it. So actually, I'm gonna add the backend to it so we can learn that too as well.
Can we have in the project? Can we have a scenario whereby they store their state file in an S3 bucket? Is that a good practice?
Yes. I'm gonna go over that before we go over the rest of the script. Let me quickly go over the backend first, because that is important information. So in real life scenario, like Prince said, we're not gonna be doing this locally. We're gonna be, and sometimes you might do this locally. It just really depends on what environment you're working in. But majority of the time, your state file is going to be stored in some kind of S3 bucket. So to configure S3 bucket, what you need to do is create the bucket manually. You can also create this with Terraform, but you need that bucket to exist prior to creating whatever instance you want to create, right? So that's why I said create it manually, just for demo purposes. So I'm gonna create a new bucket here. I'm gonna call it Terraform state backup batch. And I'll make sure it's not encrypted and create the bucket. Okay, so now I've created my state my state bucket basically. So now I can use that and define it within my code. So this is what it would look like if you, after it's been created, you just copy the state file name. I mean, the S3 bucket name. And then this block here would be required for you to configure your where your S3, your state file is going to be stored in S3 bucket, right? So in this bucket here, the value has to be the one you just created, the name of the bucket you just created. So in this case, it's going to be Terraform state backup, blah, blah, blah. The key would be where you want the state file to go into in the bucket, right? So this, I created this path here. So let's say you want your state file to go into dev/terraform.tf state. It's gonna create this folder and it's gonna store this Terraform state in there. The region, you have to specify the region you're utilizing.
Sorry. Let me ask a question. So, or if you create those folders in the bucket, you can just specify it. Right? It will just go directly.
Yeah, you can create the folder in the bucket as well, or you can create the folder from here.
Okay, so if it doesn't exist, it will create it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay, so and lastly, you just specify the region and then you're all set. This is what it takes for you to configure the backend.
Okay,
now this backend
this your project, it already has access to that your account. It's already referencing that account, so it'll be easy to access the buckets, right?
Yes. Yes. So if you remember yesterday, we gave it admin access. The secret key we generated was admin access. So I don't need to do anything from my end anymore, right? But let's say that user I created was limited with access. I would need to go back to that IAM user and give it access to be able to access this bucket.
Okay, cool.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically that's how you configure the S3 bucket. It's pretty easy. It's just this block of code that you need to add. And just make sure that the bucket has been created before you add this. All right. Any questions regarding that?
Yes, I have a question. This is Newman. Because yesterday you said that everything that we create, that we have to do it basically from the VS Code from Terraform, because if we don't do it on here, if we go to the instance and make the changes, that Terraform will not likely pick it up. So does that override this setting that you just did?
Yeah. So this setting I just did is so Jenkins is aware of the state file, right? And it picks up the state file to either destroy the infrastructure you just created or update the infrastructure you just created. If we don't have this state file, right? And I'll give you why the state file is important. If we don't have the state file if we don't have the state file back end configured, then what would happen on Jenkins is it's gonna store that state file on the server, right? But if it stores it on the server, there's no way you can make updates or destroy the infrastructure, because Jenkins will have to search for that state file and know where that state file exists. But if you have your back end configured and an S3 bucket already created, within your configuration file, you can point to that bucket name and tell Jenkins, okay, now I have a bucket name already configured. This is where I store my state file. I want you to make whatever changes. So let's say I change a specific value here. I change the instance type to T2 medium. and I already provisioned one prior to, right? Because I have this backend configured, it's gonna first call the state file that exists in S3 bucket, see what exists within that state file, and then compare it to the one you're about to provision and make the necessary changes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. So, the file I was working on. Sorry, guys, I think I got this mixed up. Okay. So yeah, going back to the resource block, so yeah, I was just passing this as a variable, the application for the name. So the result of this would be u2 dash dev dash the application name, which would be in this case Artifactory, right? And then also passing this tags created by application OS, which is the operating system, and then environment, which is the lifecycle. I'm also passing that as a variable too as well. Here you need to update the key, the name of the key. So I already have a key that exists in AWS called Terraform. So you just need to make sure you create a key in AWS. If you go to AWS here, you go to key pairs. Okay, so as you can see, I have a key that already exists called Terraform. So that's what I'm referencing. And then just like before, referencing the security group, which is in here, outputting the private key public tags and ID. Now for the security group, also the same thing, passing a variable for the
Excuse me,
tag.
Tony. I have a question. It's Dami.
Hey,
If
Dan.
you already have an existing key like that's not still stored with Terraform, like the one we've been using before, can you use it?
Yeah, you just have to specify the name
Okay,
here.
thank you.
And also, whenever you're specifying the name, just make sure it doesn't have .pem. It should only be the name.
Okay.
Okay. So for the security group, I opened the ports that are required for Artifactory, which is the 8081 and 8082. Those are the required ports. And then I'm just tagging the security group. So nothing special here. The Jenkins file. This is a lot of information. So I'm doing this on. I'm using my master because I'm using my master to. I'm not running my job on a slave. I have enough space on my master to run it. So that's why I'm just using my master to run on the pipeline. And then this is the parameters I'm passing. So I have an app name parameter. I have a selection of different life cycles. So I have the master, the dev, the QA, the prod. So this corresponds to the branches, right? So that's why I said you can leave the branch as the default, which is master. If you need to use the QA, the dev, QA, or prod, what you need to do within your repo, all you have to do is just create a new branch, and I'll show you here. So go to branch, and here, okay. So here, once you go to branches, you can just create a new branch from the master, right? And you can call it dev. call it dev, you can call it UAT, you can call it prod. So what it does is after you've created that those branches within your repo, Jenkins gives you the option to select individual environments that you like to deploy into, right? So that's the benefit of this. Also, I also passed different instance types, so you can select that too as an option for the instance sizes. And then this is just a Boolean parameter that auto approves the CI/CD pipeline, right? Here, these are the environments that we have defined in Jenkins. This information, I know this is a lot of code, guys, but majority of those Jenkins files are available to you on the web as well. A lot of this, I just had to do a little bit of modification. And one thing about Jenkins that I like to as well is with Jenkins, you can use things like pipeline syntax. So there are different steps here that you can utilize to basically suit whatever needs or whatever application needs that you have, right? And you can just gradually construct this Jenkins file like this. But it's with the help of this pipeline syntax that I did this, and with information online. So it's not something I wrote from scratch per se. It's just it's available to you out there, and you just have to do a little bit of modification, just like Terraform. Okay, so this is the environment that has been preset on Jenkins. So we have the access ID, which I already set. We have the secret ID, which is already set as well. So here for the instance type, what I'm doing is I've already defined that variable within my Terraform
Hold on, can you go inside? Sorry, can you go inside the this part? Now your environment, okay. You already defined this. I'm looking at line 17. You already defined that when you were creating your credentials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So it picks up the environment, the credential ID you had created earlier on. Right? Okay. The same for line 18. Okay. Now this is a TFVAR instance type. You are defining it here.
Yes.
Getting that value from the parameters you have that you defined within the parameters section up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I understand it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. For the access, on the environment, the AWS access key, I think you changed the credentials to AWS access key IDD, I suppose. So do you change that here, or is that going to do it by itself?
So that is actually, let me change it. This is the configuration that I had.
Right?
Yeah, this is the existing one I had that I'm using here. But I can also use the new one I just created. Let me go back to Jenkins.
So guys, while he's doing that, I want to say something. I know there's a lot of details in this, okay? Please, okay, I want to beg most of you, especially a lot of you that are busy, or you want to leave this to a few days, and maybe you wait till Friday and you start rushing to complete it. You would run into a lot of roadblocks. It's better immediately we are done with the class, start working on this, okay? Take it step by step. These are a lot of details. It needs time. It needs you to actually watch the video, go through the steps and work on it. But trust me, when you complete it, you're going to be proud, because all this stuff you're learning within this short while, trust me, you can't imagine what is actually going to do for you within your career. This is actually a professional way of organizing a project. I like the Jenkins file. I'll probably steal part of this Jenkins file for the main DevOps deployment pipeline. This makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so guys, please, okay, don't worry. It may be so cloggy, okay, but after this, watch the video and take it step by step. You have a whole week, okay. I know we did the introductory yesterday, okay. You have a whole week to complete this stuff. And trust me, if you put in the work during this week, you surely get it. Okay. All right. Carry on, Tommy.
Yes, I already updated the access key and the secret key. So that is all good there. So now we're using the one I just created. So here, as mentioned before, what I'm doing here is I'm just exporting the variables I passed within my current directory in Terraform. I'm exporting that into Jenkins, right? So the way to do that is the way you defined the whatever variables here. The reason why I closed this quote and I didn't define that in here was because I want to have an option in Jenkins to select rather than defining it here, right? So that's why, remember I mentioned that Terraform allows you to allows your environment to be efficient, consistent. This is the way to make it consistent, right? By passing variables that you can select, you know, so that way you can track your changes, you can roll back, you can update your changes, you can destroy your infrastructure within a click of a button, right? So that's the benefits of this, and that's the.
I want to add something. Because we have our environment variabilized, the backend system, okay, we could add for that dev. I know you have created. You're trying to create the folder dev, okay? Why don't you variabilize that part so that the environment that you trigger, okay, it creates only the environment folder within that state file.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
gotcha, actually, that makes sense.
You have what's the backend? Yeah, that dev. Okay, so you make it a variable. You got to variabilize that part. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it picks up the variable from the Jenkins file.
Something like this, right? So it's gonna pick up the application and then store the state file in there, correct?
Yes, it's gonna pick it up. So okay, so I'm trying to figure out how does it now reference, how does it get what you inject from your Jenkins file, as in from Jenkins? How does it get that variable? For example, if you select dev, okay, all right, where does it get the dev from?
The dev, it gets the dev from Jenkins. So you
okay,
remember
I get this part. Yes.
Here?
Okay, good. I get this part. Okay. Where is it? Hold on. The name is branch. Okay. So it gets it from branch, right? Cool. So where does it? So now the branch goes into TF variable underscore environment. Okay. So where does it reference that TF environment, TF variable environment? Where does it reference it?
The TF var environment. Are you talking about this one?
Good. Now
yeah, this is it right here.
Connects to this. Okay.
Okay. So
yeah.
Basically, I'm closing this because I don't want to define it. I want it to pick it up on Jenkins, right? So that's why.
So it picks up. Okay, I get that. So it picks up this environment. It picks up everything within the environment, all the variables within the environment, right? Okay, cool. I get it now. All right.
And this, I've not tried this, but this should work. So this, I'm just doing application. So since we're doing an Artifactory server, it's first gonna create an Artifactory folder, and then it's gonna dump the state file in there.
No, what I want, okay, what I would love to see under that, instead of that var, I would like to see, okay, the branch. I would like to see the branch, okay, that branch,
Gotcha.
that particular branch name. I think that makes
Okay,
better.
so
Yeah. I don't know how you want to reference it. If it's gonna get good, okay, good, perfect. Yep. So this should work. So it's gonna pick up the exact branch that you select. It's gonna create that particular folder in S3 bucket so that every single branch, if you're creating a dev, creating UAT, creating, whatever environment is creating, is gonna reference that that branch in S3 bucket that you create.
So just a quick input to this. You might run into issues with this. The reason being is, let's say you have like multiple applications you want to deploy at a factory, Tomcat, whatever server.
Okay.
If you're using just one folder to store all the state file, then you're gonna have duplicates, right? So that's why I'll recommend you separate them into different application folders. So instead of this being environment, this can be application/environment, then state file.
Oh, okay.
Make sense?
That's fine. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try this. Let me just quickly, I know we're running out of time here, but let me explain the rest of this. So here, we're just selecting an option. Jenkins is gonna provide you an option to select for the branches and the instance type. And the checkout stage is where you git clone and git clone into the Jenkins server. So if you remember earlier, I said you should open a tab and leave it open. So here you have to paste the credential ID and also the URL here. So I'm gonna go back to that. So the credential ID is right here. Copy this credential ID. Okay, and then I'm gonna paste the URL as well. Okay, so now we're good with the checkout process. It's gonna clone.
I also think, Kelly, Tommy, I also think if you paste that entire code, it will also work.
Oh yeah, it will also work. Yeah, either one will work.
Yeah, it will also work.
Okay, so yeah, you can paste the entire thing too as well. I don't recommend you do that because the syntax that I have like this is different from that. So that's why I didn't paste that. So just copy the credential IDs, the credential ID and the URL. For the plan, this is just basically Terraform commands that I'm doing. So I'm just initializing the working directory and downloading necessary plugins. Plan outputs the plan, and this shows that plan into this text file, right? Here, it gives you like an approval stage, so you have to manually approve. You can either auto approve whenever you select this on Jenkins, and I'll show you that once you provision this, or you can select whenever you're about to apply. You can approve it whenever you're about to apply, right? So in a real life scenario, whenever you're about to push whatever changes to production, obviously it's not going to be it's not going to be automatic. Some are automatic, which is continuous deployment, right? But then you have continuous delivery where you have to manually push changes to prod. So in this case, it's going to be a manual approval, okay? And then it applies it, and then you also have a stage to destroy, and that's pretty much it. So the Jenkins file is pretty much, it looks a lot of information, but trust me, it's really easy to understand. And like Prince said earlier, the more you practice this thing, the more you understand it.
Yeah, let me
You have to
understand
keep
the
practicing.
let me understand the whole the whole picture for this pipeline. What this pipeline is doing, okay, based on the way I understand it, is that the same scripts you currently have on your, that we did yesterday from our local machine and everything, okay, this time we versioned it in Bitbucket, okay. Now we're using Jenkins and installing Terraform in Jenkins, all right. Now what we are doing is we are pulling, the first stage, we are pulling the code from Jenkins. Okay, we are doing a checkout. We pull that the scripts we currently have in Jenkins, we're pulling it out into the Jenkins server, and then we are running our Terraform init and apply. So the first part you see, okay, I see your PWD, okay, you're printing out the working directory, then you're doing your Terraform init. Okay, currently you have those files in the same workspace. Then you do your Terraform plan, okay, and then you're doing Terraform. What does this show? No color TF plan. You're redirecting it into a text file. Okay, you're redirecting the Terraform plan into a text file. Okay. Next thing you're doing is, this is like a logic. Okay, whenever whenever this is not, whenever you have the parameter not auto approve, you check that, it checks that variable. Okay, whenever this is true, okay, whenever this is not true, okay, you do this next step. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, you do this next step. Okay, you just give a message, do you want to apply, and then you do that approval. And then if it is true, you just go ahead and do your Terraform apply. You do a Terraform apply. Then after that, you can have your Terraform destroy waiting for you for approval, and or if you then you can do your Terraform destroy approval. And then what that does is you have an input Terraform destroy. It's just a click of a button. When you click it, it goes to the next stage to do your Terraform destroy actually. Okay, so these are just all the commands that you usually do within your console. You're just doing it in steps, in stages.
Excuse me, Tommy. So for the Terraform destroy, can you shed more light on that? What does it do? What does it destroy? Is it I don't know, like those.
Yeah, Terraform destroy destroys everything. Yeah. You want to tear down your infrastructure, it will tear it down.
Yeah, exactly.
But that would be when you're no more using the infrastructure, right?
Yes. So the beauty of Terraform is that it's very easy for you to set up infrastructure and tear it down. That destroy part, me, I'm not really so comfortable with it. So as a practice, I have to put a lot of guardrails within that destroy, maybe like an admin approval, where you have to put some setting password, because any developer or somebody that has access to Jenkins can easily just click on destroy and everything goes. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Tommy?
Yeah, you basically said it all. It basically just destroys whatever infrastructure you're not utilizing anymore. And then, like you said too as well, like within a pipeline, it's you want to make sure you have some admin privileges, because some developers, they can, you know, accidentally delete something, for instance, that is still being used. So yeah, that's why I added the approval stage there. But in a real life scenario, the approval stage will have some kind of like elevated, maybe like your manager or maybe like an architect that will approve that usually. Or it can even be like a senior engineer that will approve that.
Yeah, my very first project, okay, they had a pipeline similar to this, but instead they have a different pipeline job that does the destroy. So the first pipeline will just create the infrastructure. Okay, if you now want to destroy that pipeline, you got to trigger another job. So this kind of separated the apply from the destroy. The apply had your init and the apply, okay, to just do pretty much almost everything you have here, okay. Just what you don't have is the logic where it kind of separates one from the other if you have the auto approve or stuff like that. And then if you want to destroy, you just destroy that particular environment. Probably it has since it's the same workspace, okay, you just select the maybe you created a dev environment, okay, you just select that dev environment and to reference the same variables and destroy it. So carry on, Tommy.
Okay. So yeah, basically that's what the Jenkins file is. And then just to go over the deploy script is just a list of Linux commands, and then what is required to run the installation of the application. So all these commands here is something you can see on the web. As you can see, the Artifactory server, all these commands was copied off the web. This is the basic installation for a simple Artifactory server, standalone. Now, one thing I want you guys to also be aware of is this that we're doing, the Jenkins server, we're doing all of this Artifactory server, we're doing, they're basic configurations. They're very, very basic. If you're deploying like an application that has high availability, right? So let's say you have 2,000 or more than 2,000 or 10,000 users that are running on an application. Obviously, you're going to need things like databases, things like that to provision. So this would be more, right? It's not going to be like a short script like this. No, it's going to be more in here, right? That would configure the whole machine, like connecting to the database, in case if it's behind a load balancer, to traffic to route the traffic to users over the internet, things like that. So just be aware of that, majority of the installation for whatever app or web server you're trying to configure would be stored within like the user data or deploy script, right? So this has the what is required for that factory server, and I'm just invoking this to my EC2 instance block, which is right here, all right? So that's pretty much it. Let's go back to the instructions. So we already copied all our codes. Now let's see what it says. Come in and push code changes to repo with the following. In VS Code, navigate to source code icon on the right tab. But yeah, it's going to be on the right side, and then commit message and stage the environment, right? So what that means is you can use your VS Code to push whatever changes. I remember someone asked the question yesterday if they can update and pull changes with VS Code. Yes, you can, and you can also use the command line, right? So it just really depends on you what your preference is. So let's see. Okay, so I already saved all my files. I'm gonna go ahead and do an update. So it seems like for some reason VS Code is having some issues. So I'm not gonna just waste no time on that. Loading slow. So let's go with the command line. So I'm just gonna do git pull. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna use the command line. So I'm just gonna do a git pull first to make sure I have the updated changes, which I do. Then I'm gonna do a git add asterisk. This adds everything that I've made. Then I'm gonna do a git commit -m, and in double quotes, just put the message. So add in Terraform, yeah, cd pipeline. Okay, and then do a git push. So if you ever run into issues with VS Code, because it does act up sometimes, you can push your changes through command line. So the first command would be git add asterisk. The second git commit -m, whatever message in double quotes. And then lastly would be git push to push whatever changes, right? So I just want to make sure that the changes has been pushed successfully. So as you can see here in there, let me go back to the instruction. So it says go to Terraform pipeline on Jenkins and run the build. So we're ready to run the build. So I'm gonna go to the pipeline I created, and I'm gonna go ahead and build. Bear in mind, the first build is always gonna fail because it has to capture the parameters that has been defined within a Jenkins file. So every time you define a Jenkins file within any configuration, the first one is always gonna fail, okay? So now all the configuration has been captured. So it failed, we're aware of that. So now you see this build with parameters, right? This is where the fun part begins. So you can add the name of the application. So here, the name of the application is add a factory. I'm doing it in the master branch. I want a T2 small. I'm not gonna auto approve this because I want to show you how it's gonna prompt me to approve the apply. I'm gonna run the pipeline. So now, if you remember, I said you should download Blue Ocean. You can run this like this, but Blue Ocean is what allows you to trigger the destroy. So open this in a new tab. It gives you a more defined UI, and it's more the UI is more user friendly. Let's see here. Okay, so I figured that variable, it won't like that variable in there.
Yeah, you can just
So we're gonna troubleshoot.
yeah, just change it, or do you need to define the variable?
Let's try this way. I think it should work, but let's try this way. Go back to the pipeline run.
Have you pushed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can run this from either the standard version, which is this, or you can run this from Blue Ocean, right? Like that part didn't work. Make sure the changes I pushed it. Has that updated change? 9 seconds ago, yeah, it seems like it has. No, it doesn't. It does, okay. So now let me run this pipeline again. If it doesn't, then we can just, we'll probably have to declare it in there. Yeah, so it's, I don't think it's possible to do that, to pass the variable within the key.
Okay.
I'm just gonna specify it.
Oh, Tommy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just want to add something. Is there a note or another guideline we can just be going to be able to do all this by ourselves? Because I won't lie to you, I can't even figure out anything right now.
Okay, like
So once again, I know this is a lot of information, and you're going to understand this once you actually do the lab. The lab is going to explain everything in details. So rest assured, I know it's a lot of information I covered in one session and one sit-in, but the goal here is, and I'm really not gonna, I'm just gonna be transparent with you guys. A lot of this information is whenever you do it, you begin to get comfortable with it. Yes, I can explain it in details, but the thing here is you practicing how to use Terraform and how to understanding the terminologies as well. But like I said before, rest assured, everything is explained in details in the labs. If you run into any issues, feel free to reach out. I'll assist, but you shouldn't have any issues. And the more you practice, the more you become comfortable. And also, I'm also gonna send like whatchamacallit, I'm gonna send some lessons that you guys can take, some courses you guys can take on Terraform that are under like $10 or so. So I'll send that too as well later on today. So that way you guys can, take some of those courses if needed.
Okay, thank you. That sounds much clearer. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, okay, so I already removed that variable and I'm gonna provision this again. Fingers crossed, this should work now. There we go. Okay, so as mentioned, it's gonna ask you, it's gonna prompt for you to accept the plan first, approve it. So I'm gonna go ahead and approve it, proceed. And now it's gonna start showing you what it's doing in the back end. So it already created the security group. I'll show you the two different ways. This way is more scanty for me, so that's why I don't like using this on the current pipeline. Yeah, this way is more scanty for me, so that's why I don't like using the standard version, and I prefer using the Blue Ocean. So
hello, Tommy.
Right.
I have two questions. One,
yeah,
if you're running it simultaneously like this on Jenkins and also on Blue Ocean, is it gonna cause a problem And two, why did the build fail the first time with the variable that you had configured on VS Code?
Great questions. So the first question, no, you won't have any conflicts between if they're running simultaneously on Blue Ocean and the standard version, because they're both on the same, they're running on Jenkins, right? So you shouldn't run into any issues with that. It just basically, the Blue Ocean just gives you like a more clear and nice UI. That's all it does, to be honest. It doesn't do anything better than that. It just gives you like a really defined UI, and it does more stuff actually. So, you know, you can track changes in here. So the changes I just pushed, if you notice, this is the change here, you know, and things like that. So let's say you have like a CI pipeline, all that. You can see all that here, or artifacts. That's why I like the Blue Ocean better. And the second question, the reason why that failed was because you can pass a variable as a key for the backend block. So that's why that was failing. We have to hard code whatever path we want to specify and store the state file. So that's why that was failing, and I had to hard code it.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, so here, as you can see, our this thing was successful. Our deployment was successful, and this is the output of the private IP, public, and the name of the EC2 instance. So if I go to AWS, I should see that EC2 instance reflect. So here it is. So now let me go to port. I believe Artifactory is running on port 8081. So if I go to that IP, the public IP 8081, I should have Artifactory running. So I did 8080. So as you can see, it's coming up. It's still deploying. Also, the way to track the changes, if you guys remember, I mentioned that the user data, there's no way for you to track the changes as it's deploying the application, right? So you have to log into the server to track the changes, and the way to do that is you SSH into it, of course. The SSH. And what you can do is you can do a tail on, I think is on, is tail -f/ fuck that directory.
Another way you could do is when you're doing your Terraform apply, okay, you could redirect the output into a log file.
Yep.
Yeah, you could have it on display into a log file, and then just steal that log file that you have. Yeah, this is Terraform's own log file, but you could have your own log file too. You could tell that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he's right. You can definitely do that as well. You can redirect it to a different log file that you're comfortable with, or you can just tell, let's say you like to see the process and you have like a long installation process, right? That takes, because you have some installation process that can take 30 minutes, right? Because you have just a very intricate installation. However, if you want to track that changes and you want to track the process all you have to do is just leverage the tail command. The tail just shows you as commands are being executed on the server, right? So it shows you the progress. And then you tail this directory /var/log/cloud-init.log. That is the default directory for user data. That's only if you don't have it, you know, redirecting to a different log file. So that's the way you can track it. So if you go back here, as you can see, the Artifactory is up and running. So it looks like our deployment was successful. Now to destroy the infrastructure, all you have to do is just approve this process, and it's just gonna go ahead and destroy everything you created, right? So it's a very, very simple process. Any questions so far? I think that pretty much covers it. I just need to run the destroy here. So if I apply this, then you guys can see the destroy.
All right, guys.
So now also,
yeah, sorry, let me add something. I know this is a lot of details, okay, and there is no way you guys can actually follow by as he was doing it and everything, you know. It's a lot of process. I know most of you would have been lost at some point or the other, but trust me and take my word for this, okay? With what you learned yesterday, okay, if you can implement this lab, it is gonna be clear. You don't have to understand every single detail, okay? But just know how it works, okay? The script, there's really, you don't have to really memorize it. Nobody's gonna actually tell you, oh, can you come and write this script from that? Most of the scripts you just get templates and just make changes and stuff like that, okay? But if you implement it, follow it step by step, you'll be fine, okay? Go ahead, Tommy.
yeah, I was gonna add something and then I forgot.
Tommy, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so like at the end now I can see like the Terraform destroyed has been implemented. Does that mean the infrastructure has been destroyed? Because it said
yeah, it's been terminated.
Okay. Oh, I see.
One of the beauties of Terraform is that, and why a lot of people use it, is that if you want to set up an infrastructure right now, okay, it's easy for you to set it up. When you're done with the project, easy for you to destroy it. Okay, to go to your next project, whatever. I remember. Yes, go ahead.
I have another question. So do you have to destroy it immediately like we did right now, or you can leave it for some time?
No, you don't see the thing. You don't have to, okay? But it's very flexible because it's infrastructure as code. You can carry this code. It's like a box. Anywhere you go, if you like, you terminate it. If you like, you start it. Like I'll give you one use case. My very first project, okay, they used Terraform, and they used Terraform to provision a lab environment. We had 3 lab environments. So when you run the Terraform, it will provision 3 lab environments for us for the application. So we always play around, test anything, play around anyhow. If we notice the environment is not working very well, we destroy it and create it again. Okay. If we notice, hey, something is not working fine, maybe we have done something we're not supposed, we just destroy the environment and bring it back up. Okay, so it helps instead of you troubleshooting, hey, my Sonar Cube is not working as it used to work before. And you check, you try troubleshooting, it's not working. Just destroy it and set it up again. Terraform will do all this work for you. In minutes, you'll have the time you now need to spend. Most of the issues you guys faced in the lab, oh, my Tomcat is not working, it was working before, it's not working again. What can I do? Hey, if you provision it with Terraform, just destroy it and build it again. Does that give you a good answer?
Yeah, it does. So if you provision it and it's working according to your desired perfection, like you can just leave it, right?
Yeah,
And so you
yeah,
don't
it
need
depends. It's all on
infrastructure.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Left to me, I'm not comfortable with that destroy part. Okay, that's why you have to put a lot of guardrails, as in a lot of guard around it. Put lots of approval stuff. Okay, maybe you can even have 2 levels of approval. Maybe if the manager approves, the manager of that one will also approve. And then finally, the owner of the application will now approve to now be sure, okay, do you really want to destroy? And go ahead and destroy. So it all depends on you. For your dev lower level environment, that's fine. But for the production, you have to be very, very careful, because once you destroy production, everything goes. Did I answer well, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, with the Terraform tool as well, one thing you can always do as well is there are ways you can use things like Ansible, right? If you have like a Terraform environment spun up, once again, Terraform is not the best tool for a configuration management tool, right? To manage any application that you have. I wouldn't recommend Terraform because it can be very hectic, right? So if you have your infrastructure already set up, this is where you can just, you know, have another Terraform workspace that configures your Ansible tower, right? And then you can use that Ansible tower to, or you can even have a server. You don't even need Ansible tower. You can just configure a different server that has Ansible and integrate that with Jenkins. Jenkins is basically, look at Jenkins as your orchestration tool that does your CI/CD pipeline. So you don't need any other UI. You don't need to have any other UI, right? Like Ansible Tower or Terraform Enterprise or things like that. You just need your Jenkins. So if you have any updates that you need to push, rather than you destroying your infrastructure and having to start from scratch, which is a hassle, you can use Ansible to manage whatever packages you like to update within that environment. So it just really depends on what you like to do. If you want, like, also Terraform, a lot of people are going towards the blue-green deployment, and what that means is where you push out releases with 0 downtime. That is very, very hard to do, right? That's where you have to gradually transfer traffic from a server that already exists to another server, right? And that's where Terraform comes in, because Terraform is a provisioning tool used for just managing infrastructure, right? So that's where Terraform, you can tear down your infrastructure, destroy it, right? And then bring up a new one. But in this case, for the blue-green deployment, the way that would work is you will have to have multiple EC2 instance blocks, right? And then if it's behind like a load balancer, let's say, I don't have a load balancer now, and I wish I really did, but I would have showed you guys like an example. But a load balancer is where like you route traffic to the internet, like I said. And then you're gonna have
cover,
like an EC.
yeah, let me add this. We're gonna cover that. We're gonna do blue-green deployment. We'll cover, on the project, they're gonna have 2 production servers, okay? And then they'll do the deployment, they'll do the blue-green deployment, route traffic from one to the other, and then run the deployment, and then we route traffic back. That way there's no downtime for anything. We will actually cover that in detail in the projects. So you guys will,
if you're gonna,
you understand this. Yeah, continue, Tommy.
Yeah, so if
I mean, I have a question, though, in case.
Yeah, go ahead, boss.
Is there a question? I need to share my screen. So when you're done with everything.
Okay, so yeah, so the blue-green deployment, that's what it basically does. And that's where Terraform, things like Terraform will come in, because you're destroying the whole infrastructure, right? So that's where I recommend Terraform. But generally speaking, if you have like a server and you like to like update releases and things like that, then you want to possibly find a configuration tool that can do that for you. But with that being said, that completes the session today, and we can move to Q&A.
Wow, this is a lot.
Yes, Tommy, this is Newman. Yeah, I saw that you didn't need to add your security group for the port 8081. That was already configured on Terraform and VS Code automatically, right?
That is something that I added. So I was copying the scripts from the lab. So I already opened the port here in the security group. So everything has already been defined for you in the files that you're creating.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's why I was wondering, because I was surprised the JFrog Artifactory just opened by itself. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, any other questions before we go into Mr. Newman sharing his screen? Guys, any questions? Doesn't matter. This is the best time. It doesn't matter what question you have.
So guys, I know most of your questions will come up when you start doing this. Okay, so I know Kelly, told me just get ready. This week they're gonna really bust your phone. I know it's a lot, okay, and I do admit it's a lot, and there's a lot of details here. In fact, this pipeline would have taken him typically maybe like a couple of months, okay, to put together and really implement. But it's just giving you guys everything within one. And honestly, the pipeline is really awesome. I'm going to borrow some scripts from it too, for our main project. So guys, don't be afraid of it, okay? The best way to understand this in depth, in detail, is to do it. Okay, understand how it works and just flow with the whole thing. Once you do it, you trust me. I've seen this happen over and over again. Okay, you guys are not the first. You will not be the last to understand it. And trust me, you will understand Terraform. Okay. So if that's the case, let's have you who is sharing a screen, Hammer. Just share your screen. Let's have your question and let's call this a wrap.
Okay. I'm sorry, who's sharing? Is it Newman or Hama?
Yeah, this is Hammer. Hammer,
okay.
You're in your problem is you're using a PowerShell terminal. You need to use a bash terminal. You may need to install that. You're using a Windows defaults to Windows defaults to PowerShell.
Okay. Let's see here. Can you do you mind expanding the terminal, please? So just drag the terminal bigger. Okay, so yeah, it seems like you have spaces within your file. So go back to the main. And also, before we get started, you're using PowerShell, like you mentioned, so let's change that to Bash. So you see where it says PowerShell at the right side? Bottom right side? Yeah. Click on the plus sign, or the drop down arrow, sorry, yeah. And click on Git Bash. Enter. Or select new Actually, select EC2 demo. Okay. So now do ls. Okay. So you have the VPC EC2. Go to security, please. Okay, so now it seems like your file is not saved. So save it. Save both files. Perfect. So now you can run Terraform init. From the terminal. Type in Terraform init. And do Terraform plan. So do up arrow. And delete the init. And you can do the apply. Enter yes. There we go. Also, I noticed that you have your both files in the first letter capitalized. I recommend you just making everything lowercases. I mean, it's not going to affect anything, but that's just a recommendation, just to keep everything consistent. Okay, so now if you go to AWS, you should see that EC2 instance. Okay, perfect.
Toby, I have one last question, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, on the lab that we just did today, at the very beginning, do we get file? Where do we run that at for Windows users? Do we use mobile SM or what?
You may need to install Terraform on Jenkins.
Yeah, the very first, I believe like it was three codes that you wanted us to run to get to put the Terraform on Jenkins.
Yeah. So you're gonna connect to you're gonna first SSH into your Jenkins server, and then you're gonna run the commands there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
All right, guys, let's call it a wrap. I think we've done beyond 40. It's 9:40. It's a lot of details, but let's just put our hand in. This is actually a professional. This current lab is a professional way of handling a project. Yesterday was very, very simple, basic, but he's showing you how to do it professionally. We are all going to do this, okay? This week, this is what we're going to focus on. In the project, we are going to do it again as a group, okay? I think by that time, your understanding will be much clearer, okay? So we'll call this a wrap. Thank you, Hama. Thank you, Akimide, Obi, CY, Asifemi, Hamed, Ifeanyi, Ife. Jai, Newman, Olaide said, T Diamond, Vaughn, Wendy, and Tommy. Thank you so much.
Friends, when am I
Yes.
gonna be on my own group? Are you gonna give me one group, me alone, or what?
No, you don't follow for this class now. You don't know me again.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, you put me for the first class. That's good,
No,
nah?
you don't follow for this class. You're not a student now. You're just there looking.
Okay, I beg no verse. Now you tell me. Can I get a refund so that?
No problem. I have it taken care of. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
I have it set up. Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah. T Diamond, are you okay? Wendy, are you good? Olaide, are you good?
Before you call me, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, same here.
I'm okay, Prince.
Okay, cool.
Yes, boss.
Mr. Femi, how's it going with you?
Well, I can't complain, but well, yeah.
Okay, all right. TY, how is it going with you?
Hold on.
Mr. Jide, I know you already talked. It's a lot of information. I'm sure most of you are already lost, but don't worry, you'll be fine. Okay. Mr. Obi, how is it going with you?
We just have to get to work and see what it is, and then
Good. That's the spirit. Please. That's what I want to hear. Okay, we get to work and we get it done. You guys have come this far. Already interviews are the jobs will start falling in from by next month. Most of you will have your offers on the table. I'm sure of that. I'm very, very sure of that.
I'm going to say amen to that. Amen.
Yeah. I'm dealing with a very, very intelligent bunch of people. Okay, your skill sets are, some of you started from green. Now you guys are really, you're really on top of the game. I know you can do this. Put your time in it. And the beauty of it is that you guys are actually benefited from a lot of mistakes we've made from the start. So most of the mistakes we made then was that when we are dealing with things like Terraform and Docker Kubernetes, we're allowing spillover. Oh, this guy is still working on previous labs, but now you guys are focused. Okay, focus on this Terraform. You got 5 days to complete this. Okay, and then by the time you get by day 3, most of you should be good. All your questions will be answered. You get better understanding when you put it into practice. Okay, when you do it, you understand it. Okay, we'll call this a wrap. I know we've gone way beyond our time. Next week is going to be strictly 9-9. We're done. 2 hours, we're done. Okay, so hopefully we should conclude our labs next week. Okay, then the main work will now start with our project the week coming. Okay, you guys will have 1 week to do the project. There are so many things you would learn on the project. Okay, some things I will not teach in the class is deliberate because you cannot learn it on the class. You can only learn it while doing it. This particular case scenario, okay, is impossible to learn it in the class. You are supposed to actually learn this stuff while doing it, but it's good. You have a dose of it during the class, and then during the project, you now see how everything plays out. It's going to make a lot of sense because you do it yourself. And if you stand before an interviewer, there's no way. I think the first two ladies that got job offers, they were team leads, and their presentation on this was top notch. How did they just get the offer? Okay, based on their understanding of the project. The ones that were dragging, they really didn't do this project during their Terraform class. They did not participate, but I hope the story is going to be different for you guys. Every single part of this is very important. Just like this guy that said he was speaking with a recruiter and they were like, what's the most important part? And if you were not paying attention, you miss just that little thing. Most things that I used to hear in interviews, where do you store your state file? Okay, already we talked about state file in detail. I even talked about, okay, we're creating a reference in bit bucket. In S3 bucket. Okay, that's a very good place to keep the state file. In fact, I think that should be the recommended place to put it. Okay, so guys, you guys can do it. Okay, I believe so much in you. All right, we are champions. Okay, we'll call it a wrap. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tommy. This was an excellent presentation. Thank you guys for being patient and for being attentive and for putting it to work. All right, have a great week.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Prince. Thank